There is a moment in every person's life that almost nobody notices. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't arrive with applause. There are no cameras waiting to capture it. No headlines announcing it. No crowd standing up to cheer. It arrives quietly in the space between who you have been and the single decision that changes who you become. Let me tell you something. Most people spend years waiting for a miracle when their entire future is waiting for a decision. Think about that for a moment. Not 10 decisions, not 100, one. One honest decision can redirect an entire lifetime. The world teaches us that change is slow, complicated, and reserved for the lucky few. It tells us that you need perfect timing, perfect conditions, perfect confidence, and perfect circumstances before you can begin. But life doesn't work that way. The greatest transformations in history didn't begin with certainty. They began with someone deciding. Someone deciding they had suffered long enough. Someone deciding they would no longer accept mediocrity. Someone deciding that today would not look like yesterday. Everything else came afterward. I want you to imagine standing in front of two roads. One road is familiar. You've walked it every day. You know every crack in the pavement. You know every disappointment waiting around every corner. You know exactly where it leads because you've been traveling it for years. The other road is uncertain. You can't see very far. There are no guarantees. There are no promises. But there is possibility. And here's the truth that changes everything. Your future isn't hiding at the end of the second road. Your future begins the moment you choose to walk it. Because destiny doesn't change after the journey. It changes at the decision. That's what most people don't understand. They believe their life changes when they finally become successful. No, successes begins much earlier than that. It begins the instant a person says, enough. Enough excuses. Enough waiting. Enough blaming. Enough believing that tomorrow will somehow be different while continuing to make the same choices today. I learned something years ago that has stayed with me ever since. Your life is always moving. It is never standing still. Every day you are becoming someone. The question is not whether you're changing. The question is whether you're changing by design or by default. Every decision is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. Every morning you choose whether to wake up with purpose or drift through another day. Every conversation either strengthens your character or weakens it. Every habit either builds your future or quietly steals it. One decision may seem small, but decisions are like seeds. No farmer plants a seed expecting a forest tomorrow morning. He understands something that impatient people forget. Growth is invisible before it becomes undeniable. And your decisions work exactly the same way. You don't see the reward immediately. You see it eventually. That's why people quit too early. They mistake silence for failure. They mistake slow progress for no progress. They mistake invisible growth for wasted effort. But underneath the surface, something extraordinary is happening. Roots are growing. Character is developing. Discipline is strengthening. Confidence is quietly replacing doubt. And one day, what was invisible becomes impossible to ignore. Let me ask you something. How many people are living lives they secretly don't want, simply because they never made one courageous decision? How many dreams have been buried beneath the words, maybe next year? How many books were never written? How many businesses were never started? How many healthy relationships were never built? How many incredible lives remained imaginary because someone kept postponing a decision they already knew they needed to make? Fear has convinced millions of people that staying the same is safer than changing. But think about this. Is it really safer? Is it safer to spend another decade doing work that drains your soul? Is it safer to carry the same regrets into another year? Is it safer to keep repeating habits that have already proven they cannot produce the life you want? Sometimes the greatest risk isn't making a bold decision. Sometimes the greatest risk is refusing to make one. Because indecision has a price. It charges interest every single day. Every day you delay becoming the person you're capable of becoming, life presents opportunities that quietly pass by. Not because you weren't talented. Not because you weren't intelligent. Because you weren't ready. Readiness is rarely about ability. It's about commitment. And commitment always begins with a decision. I once heard about an ordinary man who spent nearly 20 years telling himself he wasn't qualified enough to start his own business. He read books. He attended seminars. He watched successful people from a distance. He waited until he felt completely prepared. 20 years. Then one afternoon, he finally admitted something to himself. He wasn't waiting to become ready. He was waiting for fear to disappear. But fear never disappeared. The only thing that disappeared was 20 years. That realization changed everything. He didn't suddenly become fearless. He simply became more committed to his future than to his comfort. Within months, he had taken more meaningful action than he had during the previous 2 decades. Nothing magical had happened. His intelligence hadn't doubled overnight. His resources hadn't multiplied. His circumstances hadn't suddenly become perfect. Only one thing changed, his decision. And once that decision changed, every other choice began lining up behind it. His mornings changed, his schedule changed, his conversations changed, the books he read changed, the people he surrounded himself with changed, his standards changed. Eventually, his entire identity changed because identity follows repeated decisions. Most people try to change their identity first. They say, one day I'll become disciplined. No, you become disciplined by repeatedly making disciplined decisions. You don't become confident and then act. You act, and confidence slowly catches up. You don't become successful and then develop successful habits. You develop successful habits until success becomes difficult to avoid. That is the hidden power of one decision. It never travels alone. One good decision introduces another, and another, and another, until the person staring back at you in the mirror is almost unrecognizable from the person who made that first courageous choice. Now think about the opposite. One careless decision can also begin a chain. One excuse becomes another excuse. One missed opportunity becomes another missed opportunity. One day of procrastination quietly becomes a year. A year becomes 5. 5 becomes a lifetime. That's why every decision matters. Not because each one is dramatic, but because each one points your life in a direction. Direct is more powerful than speed. A person walking slowly toward the right destination will eventually arrive. A person running quickly toward the wrong destination only gets lost faster. So, before asking how fast your life is changing, ask yourself where your decisions are taking you. Because every choice whispers something about your future. Every habit tells a story about tomorrow before tomorrow ever arrives. And here's what most people never realize until much later. The smallest decisions are often the ones with the greatest long-term consequences because they rarely feel important in the moment. Think about this for a moment. Nobody wakes up one morning completely transformed. Nobody suddenly becomes healthy, wealthy, disciplined, respected, or fulfilled overnight. What changes first is almost invisible. A decision to wake up 30 minutes earlier. A decision to turn the television off and read 10 pages. A decision to stop complaining. A decision to make one difficult phone call you've been avoiding. A decision to tell yourself the truth instead of another comforting excuse. Those moments don't look impressive. If someone were watching your life from the outside, they might not even notice anything had changed. But life notices. Your character notices. Your future notices. Because every meaningful life is built in moments that appear ordinary. Let me tell you something. The world celebrates dramatic victories, but it is built by quiet decisions. The athlete lifting the trophy is celebrated for one evening. What nobody applauds are the thousands of mornings when he got up while everyone else stayed in bed. The successful entrepreneur is admired for the company everyone can see. What nobody sees are the years of uncertainty, rejection, empty bank accounts, sleepless nights, and moments when quitting seemed completely reasonable. The confident speaker standing before an audience wasn't born with confidence. Confidence was built one uncomfortable conversation at a time, one speech at a time, one mistake at a time, one lesson at a time. Here's what most people don't understand. The life you admire is usually the result of decisions nobody witnessed. Successes has always preferred privacy. Character has always been developed in silence. Discipline has always grown where applause cannot reach. That is why you must stop measuring your progress by how much recognition you're receiving. Recognition is late. Growth arrives first. A tree spends years strengthening its roots before anyone talks about its height. You are no different. There may be seasons where it feels like nothing is happening. You continue showing up. You continue learning. You continue improving. You continue making better decisions. And yet the outside world sees no remarkable difference. Don't become discouraged. The greatest work is happening beneath the surface. There is something extraordinary taking place every time you choose discipline over convenience. Your identity is being rewritten. Not with words, with actions. Identity isn't what you say about yourself. Identity is the collection of decisions you've repeated long enough to believe. If every morning you choose to honor your commitments, eventually you stop saying, I'm trying to become disciplined. Instead, you begin saying, this is simply who I am. That shift changes everything. Because once your identity changes, your standards change. And once your standards change, your life begins to rise to meet them. Think about the people who seem impossible to discourage. Have you ever met someone who keeps moving forward regardless of obstacles? Someone who refuses to stay defeated? Someone who loses everything and somehow rebuilds? People often call them extraordinary. But I've noticed something. They're not necessarily stronger than everyone else. They simply made one powerful decision long ago. They decided that circumstances would never have the final word. That decision became a filter through which every challenge was viewed. Failure wasn't permanent. It was information. Rejection wasn't personal. It was preparation. Delay wasn't denial. It was development. The event stayed the same. The meaning changed. And when the meaning changed, the future changed. Life is rarely determined by what happens to you. More often, it is determined by the decision you make about what happens to you. Two people can lose the same opportunity. One decides, my life is over. The other decides, this is where my next chapter begins. The event is identical. The future is completely different. Because events do not shape destiny nearly as much as decisions do. I remember meeting a man who spent years blaming everyone around him. He blamed the economy. He blamed his childhood. He blamed his employer. He blamed politics. He blamed luck. And for years, nothing changed. Not because life was against him, because responsibility had never entered the room. One day, after another disappointing year, someone asked him a question that made him uncomfortable. If every excuse disappeared tomorrow, what would you do differently? He didn't answer immediately. The silence lasted longer than anyone expected. Finally, he admitted something. I've been waiting for someone else to rescue a life that only I can change. That sentence became the beginning of a completely different future. Nothing around him changed overnight. His neighborhood stayed the same. His income stayed the same. His problems stayed the same. But his thinking shifted. Instead of asking, who's responsible for my situation? He began asking, what decision can I make today? Notice the difference. One question creates victims. The other creates leaders. One keeps your eyes fixed on the past. The other turns your attention toward possibility, and possibility is always waiting for a decision. Let me ask you another question. How many opportunities have you overlooked because they arrived wearing work clothes? We imagine opportunities as grand entrances, perfect timing, perfect confidence, perfect certainty. But opportunities usually appear disguised as difficult conversations, early mornings, extra effort, learning a new skill after everyone else has gone home, saying no to temporary pleasure so you can say yes to a better future. Opportunity rarely announces itself. It simply asks, will you decide? Think about the sculptor standing before a massive block of stone. To everyone else, it's just rock, heavy, cold, ordinary. But the sculptor sees something different. He sees what could exist inside. Each strike of the hammer seems insignificant. One strike doesn't create the masterpiece. Neither does the second or the 100th. Yet every strike matters. Eventually, the world admires the statue. Very few appreciate the thousands of deliberate blows that made it possible. Your life is being sculpted the same way. Every decision removes something unnecessary. Every disciplined action chips away at old habits. Every courageous choice breaks off another piece of fear. Little by little, the person you were begins revealing the person you were capable of becoming all along. Not because someone gave you a new life, because you uncovered the one that had been waiting beneath years of hesitation. I learned something years ago that completely changed the way I viewed difficult days. There are days that pay you immediately, and there are days that invest in you. Most people only appreciate the first kind. They love the days filled with victories, compliments, promotions, and visible progress. But the second kind of day, the difficult day, the frustrating day, the day when nothing seems to go according to plan. That day may be making deposits into your character that become priceless years later. The decision to keep going when nobody expects you to. The decision to stay honest when dishonesty would be easier. The decision to prepare when no reward is guaranteed. Those decisions accumulate like interest, not just in your bank account, in your soul. Because every difficult decision expands your capacity. And expanded capacity eventually attracts expanded opportunity. Think about water flowing through a narrow pipe. No matter how much pressure exists, only so much can pass through. Your character works the same way. Life can only trust you with what you have become capable of carrying. So perhaps the question isn't whether bigger opportunities are coming. Perhaps the deeper question is whether today's decisions are preparing you to hold them when they arrive. Because success doesn't simply require ambition. It requires capacity. And capacity is built one decision at a time. One promise kept, one temptation resisted, one lesson learned, one uncomfortable truth accepted, one ordinary day lived with extraordinary intention. That's why I believe the most powerful decision you will ever make isn't about changing your job, changing your city, or changing your circumstances. It's the quiet decision that says, from this day forward, I refuse to negotiate with the version of myself that wants to remain small. The moment you make that decision, something begins to awaken. You notice opportunities you used to ignore. You hear wisdom you once dismissed. You develop patience where you once demanded instant results. You become less interested in proving yourself to strangers and more interested in becoming someone you can respect when you're alone. That is a remarkable transformation. Because eventually there comes a morning when you wake up and realize that the battle isn't between you and the world anymore. It's between the person you've decided to become and the habits that are still trying to convince you to go back, because comfort has a remarkable memory. Comfort will remind you how easy it was to postpone your dreams. It will whisper that one more day won't matter. It will tell you that you deserve to wait until conditions improve. But let me tell you something. Comfort has never built a meaningful life. Comfort has never written a great book. Comfort has never transformed a broken family. Comfort has never started a business that changed a community. Comfort has never discovered what was possible because comfort is satisfied with what already exists. Growth is different. Growth asks uncomfortable questions. Growth asks, what are you pretending not to know? Think about that for a moment. Every person has at least one truth they've been avoiding. Maybe it's the truth that you've been blaming your circumstances longer than you've been changing them. Maybe it's the truth that you've allowed fear to make decisions that should have been made by purpose. Maybe it's the truth that you've spent years preparing instead of beginning. Or perhaps it's something even quieter. Perhaps you've simply lowered your expectations of yourself so gradually that you didn't notice it happening. That is one of the greatest dangers in life. Rarely do people wake up one morning and decide to settle. It happens little by little. A promise is broken, a standard is lowered, a dream is postponed, an excuse is accepted. And because nothing dramatic happens, the pattern quietly becomes a lifestyle. Years later, people wonder where their ambition went. It didn't disappear overnight. It faded through 1,000 unnoticed decisions. But here's the beautiful truth. The same process works in your favor. Excellence is also built quietly. One chapter read, one workout completed. One difficult conversation handled with maturity. 1 hour spent learning instead of scrolling. One evening invested in tomorrow instead of escaping today. None of those moments seem life-changing. Yet together they become the architecture of a completely different future. I remember speaking with a woman who believed she had fallen too far behind. She looked at successful people and saw decades of progress. She looked at herself and saw only regret. She kept saying, if only I had started 10 years ago. Finally, someone asked her a different question. What can 10 years from now say about the decision you make today? That question stopped her because she realized she was about to repeat the same mistake. She was using the past as permission to delay the future. How many people are doing exactly that? How many people say they're too young to begin until one day they say they're too old? Life doesn't ask whether the timing is perfect. Life simply keeps moving. The calendar is remarkably consistent. It never argues with you. It never waits for your confidence. It turns the page anyway. The only question is whether your decisions are moving with it. I've always believed that time is an honest teacher. It exposes every habit. It magnifies every choice. It reveals what motivation tried to hide. Because motivation is exciting. Discipline is dependable. Motivation can make you start. Discipline decides whether you continue after the excitement disappears. There will be mornings when you don't feel inspired. There will be evenings when progress seems invisible. There will be seasons when the results are so small that your old way of thinking will begin negotiating with you. It will say, skip today. It won't matter. You've already done enough. Listen carefully. Every meaningful achievement has survived those conversations. The difference is not that successful people never hear those voices. The difference is that they stop allowing those voices to vote. They hear them, they acknowledge them, and then they choose according to their values instead of their feelings. That is maturity, not controlling every emotion. Learning which emotions deserve your obedience. Think about a captain steering a ship through a storm. The waves are real. The wind is real. The danger is real. But imagine if the captain surrendered the wheel every time the sea became rough. The destination would belong to the storm instead of the navigator. Your emotions are important. They deserve to be understood. But they were never meant to become the steering wheel of your future. Purpose must steer where feelings fluctuate, and every day gives you another opportunity to place your hands back on that wheel. I've noticed something fascinating about people who transform their lives. They stop asking, what if I fail? Instead, they begin asking, who will I become if I keep refusing to try? That single shift changes everything, because now the greatest fear is no longer failure. The greatest fear becomes wasted potential. Imagine reaching the end of your life and meeting the person you could have become. Not the richest version, not the most famous version, the most faithful version. The version that honored every opportunity to grow, the version that developed every gift with patience, the version that chose courage, one ordinary day after another. Would that meeting fill you with gratitude or with questions that can no longer be answered? That image has stayed with me for years, not because it creates guilt, because it creates clarity. It reminds us that every ordinary day is quietly introducing us to someone, either the person we're becoming intentionally or the person we're becoming accidentally. And the remarkable thing is that the distance between those two lives is often measured not in talent, not in luck, not in resources, but in the decisions we make when no one else is watching. And before you leave this moment, before this video ends, before life pulls your attention back into the noise of tomorrow, I want you to make yourself one promise, not to me, to yourself, parse yourself, that this will not become another message you admired and then forgot. Because inspiration has never changed a life by itself. Action has. The future you keep imagining is not waiting for the perfect version of you. It is waiting for the decision you have been postponing. One decision to begin, one decision to forgive, one decision to learn, one decision to stand back up, one decision to become the kind of person who keeps their word, especially when no one is watching. Years from now, people may look at your life and call it success. They will see the victories, they will see the confidence, they will see the strength. But they will never truly understand that everything they admire with a quiet moment, when no one was applauding, when nothing had changed except one decision inside your heart. Never underestimate that moment. History is filled with ordinary people who made extraordinary decisions. They were not fearless.